Hi, it's Natasha here. In this video, we're going to be looking at why it's a good idea to build relationships with your lecturers and tutors throughout your degree. This is where we'll be looking at why it's important to get help early on when you first have a concern or issue, but also some of the possible consequences if you don't. The reason we're looking at this is because so many students don't get the help when they need it, and this ends up having a big impact on their overall grade, their physical and emotional well-being, and can even have a knock-on effect in other areas of their lives. So, why might you need to speak with a lecturer? Well, it could be that you need a bit of extra information about a subject, or there's something you're not quite clear on and need clarification on. Maybe you have a concern about the course. It could be that there's a deadline that you're struggling to meet and you need an extension. Or maybe there's something happening in your personal life that's causing you to miss classes and is affecting your work. Whatever the reason, every student needs help at some point during their degree. For some students, going to see their lecturer is no big deal, but for others, it can be a daunting experience. And some students don't even think they should be asking for help and feel they should be able to cope on their own, seeing it as a sign of failure or weakness. As a result, it's not uncommon for students to put it off until it's way too late or to avoid altogether, usually at their detriment. I spoke with a number of lecturers and university staff when putting together this video, and the one thing that they all said was just how many students come to them last minute when they're at crisis point and they need help. The thing is with this is there's less that they can then do to help the student. I've also heard numerous stories from students having been in this situation, and I know this to be the case from personal experience. When I was in my final year doing my dissertation, I found that I was disorganised, I was unable to prioritise, and I was falling more and more behind in my work. Looking back, I was probably suffering from anxiety and depression, but I didn't go and seek counselling until the second term of my final year. I then didn't go and speak to my tutor about what was going on until days before handing my dissertation in. As a result, it was too late to get extenuating circumstances, and I ended up handing in an unfinished piece of work. And this then, of course, had a knock-on effect on my final grade. So why did this happen? Well, I was simply too scared to go and speak to both my personal tutor and my dissertation tutor about what was happening. I certainly didn't realise the consequences that not going to get help was going to have. They weren't scary people, but I just didn't have the confidence to allow myself the chance to go and explain what was happening and how my work was being affected. Instead, I struggled on alone, and I think there were serious issues of self-care that were missing, and I made things much harder and much more stressful for myself than they needed to be. Admittedly, I hadn't been to see my lecturers and tutors much throughout the rest of my degree, and in hindsight, this certainly didn't do me any favours. Had I gone to see them more regularly, I'm sure I would have been more confident and comfortable asking them for help at a time when I really needed it. Also, I simply didn't realise the level of support that was out there, and from speaking to other students, I think this is a common theme. It's not always easy, but it's much better to be realistic about deadlines and personal circumstances. There may be specific procedures in place that you can apply to for an extension or extenuating circumstances, and your academic or personal tutor may be able to help you with this. I'm sure you'll agree this is a much better option than suffering alone, having extra anxiety and stress, and handing in a late or unfinished piece of work. Remember, your lecturers and tutors are responsible for teaching you, setting and marking your coursework, and supervising projects and dissertations. They're there to give you the academic guidance that you need to complete your degree. As part of this, they'll have dedicated office hours that you can go and speak to them and ask any questions that you have. I definitely recommend you make the most of these. Whilst what I'm talking about might seem a bit obvious from a distance, when you're in stressful and uncertain situations, it's all too easy to forget. I really hope this video has helped you to understand why it's so important to build relationships with your lecturers and tutors and to get help early on. Have a think. Is there something on your course that you're not quite sure about? Would you benefit from talking to someone about a concern or issue that you have? Are you on top of your work, or are you struggling to keep up with things? Take a few moments to reflect and be really honest with yourself. If things are okay, then that is fantastic. But bear in mind what we've talked about moving on throughout your degree. If you're still having reservations about talking to your lecturers or tutors, then have a look at the next video where we'll be looking at some reasons why this may be and how to overcome them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you then.